Hi, everybody, and welcome to the golden age of ad-supported TV, our panel here. I'm going to introduce you quickly to the panelists so we can jump right into this pretty rich topic because we've got a ton to cover. So I'm just going to go around the horn. I don't know where they're positioned on your screen. I'm going to go from top to bottom on my list. Lindsay Albertson, Vice President, Ad Experience and Ad Impact at Measurement at NBCU. Chris Flatley, VP Ad Sales at Fubo TV. Rose McGovern, Group VP, Client Success and Digital Ops at DirecTV, and John Nolan, Managing Director, Apex Content Ventures at Publicis. So we've got a broad range of points of view here. We've got OG MVPDs, new G MVPDs, sponsors of content, and then everybody who kind of helps fill the impressions and ad experience across many different platforms here. I'm interested to the golden age of ad-supported OTT. To me, speaks to a very specific sliver of the ad television economy. And when I'm asked by my mother what the heck it is I do, I say I work in TV. I don't say AVOD. I don't say FAST, which I think are actually the same thing because they're both free, they're both streaming, they're both ad-supported. But I also don't differentiate between the paid and the free. And now with Disney adding ads and Netflix adding ads, isn't it all just television now, one? And two, John, I'm going to throw this to you first, since I'm asking a pretty broad question. You're a sponsor of shows before they're even made. So how do you see the television ecosystem from your interesting point of view? And do you see it all as one big video experience, or are you segmenting from, between OTT and SVOD and others?
Thank you for the question. Difficult ones first. I think my answer, and I don't know what I say sometimes, I don't know what I think sometimes until I say it, which is a dangerous position, is I think it's all just TV. And I don't think consumers make a differentiation, viewers make a differentiation on content based on its business model or its delivery system. To them, it's just good stuff. And, as platform owners, I hope platform distributors, I think everyone agrees it's the good stuff that drives audience. It's the stuff they love that they're prepared to watch. Whether they pay for it directly with some cash up front for subscription, or they pay for it by their time or their data or their eyeballs, as we used to say, they're paying for it one way or another, or here in the UK via a taxation system or a levy, as happens in some countries. The business model is the business model of the distributors. It's not the first concern of the viewer. They don't define the content as brand-funded content, subscription-funded content, or tax-funded or ad-funded content. It's just good stuff. So yeah, it's just stuff. It's just
TV. But you in particular, you're now so Apex is a division within Publicis, which is investing in shows.
Yeah.
At the development stage, before you even have an advertiser identified. Do you weigh which kind of platform this is destined for, or are you into the project and then it finds the platform that it wants to live in, whether it's AVOD, FAST, paid, or subscription based?
It has to be a platform that's supported by advertising. We're an advertising agency group, so part of our investment, part of the strategic reason for doing this is to.
But isn't that all of them now?
Well, yes and no. I think increasingly yes, which is good news. And there used to be a number of platforms we'd say, "Oh, we can't work with those folks yet," and increasingly those folks are coming into the fold. But I think the system is becoming. We can tie ourselves up in knots, which is what your question is really about in terms of defining the platform. So I'm going to elect not to.
Right.
My kind of, yes, we have conversations with platforms about what is it we can help you with, what content is it you'd love for us to work with you on, how can we, there's a golden secret in advertising. It funds content anyway. It's the business model of advertising.
It does today, yeah.
So, our position is how can we take a forward position in helping some investment up front, invest in content. It's up to a broadcaster, a platform, whether or not they use that to increase their spending power or to de-risk their spending power. We're going to collaborate and be a good investment partner. We're not going to interfere with the content. We're going to allow our platform partners to dictate the content which is right. And we do this all over the world. The USA being, having its scale and having its global cultural influence is a really important market for us. And I think the kind of, in quick answer to the end of this session, are we in a golden age of ad-funded OTT content? Yes, of course we are. but we're actually in a golden age of content. I think everybody has got a backlist of stuff they need to catch up on and want to binge watch, and folks recommending what they should watch. The issues are not quality of content. The issues are finding the content you want.
Discovery.
And so, yeah, discovery, search, user experience, I'm sure we'll come on to. Ad loading, I'm sure we'll come on to. But the defining characteristic is, am I loving this content? Am I prepared to invest my time as a viewer to sit in front of a platform? The business model doesn't get in the way of that experience, and shouldn't.
And I would just chime in to kind of double down also, representing the NBCU perspective, we do see video all as one, right? And specifically from a measurement perspective as well, the ability to bring together the totality of our clients' investments across our one platform actually allow us to inform and guide recommendations on optimal spending mix and things like that, where we actually see how undervalued more emerging platforms actually can be. So it very much is premium content everywhere. And to John's point, consumers are going to find that good stuff and find those quality environments to watch that content in experiences that have been built for them to really complement sort of the new age of behavior.
And you have this ecosystem that goes everywhere from FAST to an ad-supported SVOD. And for your consumers, I think Peacock is one of those services that actually elegantly bridges the gap between all those experiences. Not everybody, we'll see what happens as everybody onboards ads. But when you look at that ecosystem for advertisers, you're treating it as one ecosystem. And measurement across there, or are you segmenting it off between your FAST experience and your paid SVOD experience?
No, it's very much one platform. So, going on, I think 3 years now, right, and sort of anchoring to sort of the super spreader moment we were talking about, even CES back in 2020. We did come to market announcing NBC Universal as one platform. It is one single entry point for investment across the totality of our endpoints around the world, reaching upwards of 1 billion consumers and customers across over 200 networks and 350 digital endpoints as well. And measurement does underpin that, right, in a holistic capacity. So we've been very vocal externally about the need for new currency, right? And that very much is.
Yeah, you've been you've been way out ahead a lot of the other providers out there, actually.
Right, and so much of that is really in service of this larger message, right? Content is available everywhere, and if we fragment the way that is counted and ultimately transacted upon, we are really not serving our customers to be able to understand the totality of the video ecosystem. So our kind of new currency efforts, or the industry's new currency efforts, which very much are here in present day, are to enable the counting of exact ads quickly and across all platforms. And that very much is the way we are working with our partners across the board.
Yeah, and that brings up a ton of really good points to unpack there. Chris and Rose, you both work in some versions of the old and new MVPD ecosystems, right? But you're also veering into FAST, and that ecosystem. Do your individual companies see those as one ecosystem that the consumers navigate in between? And how are you delivering? How are you talking about those various ad experiences, the old school MVPD experience on the box for DirecTV to the new virtual MVPD that you have, and now these new FAST channels? I'll start with you, Rose, obviously, since I teed up that.
So I mean, we came up with a new tagline at the beginning of the year. We started saying, "Beam it or stream it." You might have seen, commercials with Serena or the Housewives. You might have been distracted by all those fun characters, but hopefully the message came across, putting the consumer at the center of everything we do and saying, beam it or stream it. How it gets to your TV isn't so important, but the fact that you're getting that content that John and Lindsay are talking about, that's what's important to consumers. What's also important is choice. so that, you know, the bundling, the choice, the offering, the options that, you know, everyone here in this room is doing, it's giving them the fast option, the subscription options, on demand, binging, and also watching their live TV and sports. Because don't let that get lost, right? Live TV, however you get it, is also so critically important, right? Like, I think it's so we did a survey, 67% of people are watching live TV every day. And so that's still the majority. And so factoring that in, how that translates to marketers, how that translates to the advertising we're running, is exactly what Lindsay was talking about. We, like, our addressable advertising solutions include Beam and Stream. And so we try to make it as easy for advertisers to participate in that with the currency they're already using. Agencies are already buying addressable. Clients are looking for audiences, like audiences are a good connector across screens. And so just leaning into that and making it really easy to buy audiences seamlessly across screens, mapping back to a single currency that agencies and clients are already comfortable with. So it's about, you know, choice and just ease of access.
And Chris, I mean, you have a similar but different experience in that your ecosystem is, you know, an aggregator of channels to a certain extent, but at the same time, you are, for the most part, traversing somebody else's mechanical platform, somebody else's device, right? And so, you know, a couple different questions for you. Do you see your FAST and vMVPD businesses differently? Two, that live thing Rose was just talking about is actually really important and kind of key to your central thesis here, because you have so much of your product built around sports. So do you see live and specifically sports as being a major driver on a moving forward basis? And then last, what kind of challenge does going through other people's products offer to that continuum, both from a viewership standpoint and from an advertiser standpoint? Three-part question, I apologize.
I need a notepad to take all that in, but I'll start with your opening statement that I agree with you that it's all TV. Right? And I think the important point to this audience is the evolution that's going on right now, because it's gone from spots and dots to hyper addressability and measurement, and that's continuing to evolve. And I've been in this space for 7 years now, and 7 years ago it wasn't anything like it is now, and I still think we have a long way to go. And I think that's really what's interesting about this space is how do we make this as valuable to advertisers as possible. So what we do at Fubo is, like you said, we aggregate content. We're very much in on the virtual MVPD space, where we think live sports, live television is critically important. We've also launched 60 fast channels this year. And what's going to drive what happens in this space is consumer choice, right? So we're making our bet in aggregation. Consumers want one place to access all the content they could possibly want. Reality is most people are going to watch 15 or 20 channels, but if we make 200 available, we can scale across the board. What other parts of the question did we have? You're on mute, Evan. Sorry,
I was on mute. Lastly, the last part of that was, how do you take the advertiser who walks in the door and carry them across your FAST experience and your MVPD experience? Is it one seamless integration, or is it two different products, or do you present it as one and then it's a lot of scrambling behind the scenes? I'm just curious, because everybody is adding FAST to existing products now, and I think that's the right way to go. I'm curious as to behind the scenes how heavy a lift that is, and what's the experience for the advertiser?
The engineers would kill me. I mean, it's a heavy lift, but from a sales perspective,
it's a breeze.
When we talk to advertisers, are they contextual people? Do they want sports content? Do they want entertainment content? Do they want news content? Or are they an audience play, right? Or do they want addressability? And then we build from there. So you know, if we have 200 networks to offer, somebody who wants people whose lease is up, auto lease is up in 12 months, may want all 200 networks and just want people whose lease is coming up.
Fit that bill, yeah, right, yeah.
People want contextual, other people want a mix of both. So it's really on a case-by-case basis. I think, you know, going to the title of this, the golden age, is that we really have the capability to do anything. And that's what's differentiating this from traditional linear TV. And over the past 5 years, the connected TV space and OTT has achieved the scale where that matters. And that's a game changer, really.
Yeah.
Can I be a contrarian? Can I just butt in? Sorry,
yeah, please. Because
I think we're at a tipping point, and it's a tipping point that's been brought around actually and driven by subscription services. And subscription services have taught audiences that there's a kind of on-demand world out there. You know, if we were on this panel 10 years ago, we'd been talking about the trouble with piracy and content being stolen and served to consumers without a viable business model. And the challenge of piracy was, well, present us with something better that the public don't need to steal, viewers don't need to steal. And we've done that. You know, the subscription services did that. They stepped in, they provided a very robust, very reliable, very incredibly high quality service. And now what's happening is a kind of seismic shift of people going, well, I have to pay, and forgive me my price points because mine are in pounds, not dollars, but we have to pay £20 here, £50 here, £60 here, and it's adding up. So guess what? Advertising is coming in to save the day again, because, as it has done since year dot of the first television screen. And so, you know, but we're at a tipping point in terms of, you know, to your point, Chris, you know, the engineers are doing massive jobs because it is fundamentally different. To your point, Rose, you know, that we can beam it or stream it, but they're different ecologies and different economies and different ways of serving. And the viewer doesn't care. What we're doing in the tipping point is advertising, in the way in which it's traded, and the way in which it's delivered, and the way in which it's discovered is what's being kind of worked out. And so the shift now is in consumer behavior is, look, I get OTT, I get on demand, I want it. And so, with the exception of live sport and live news, which is I need to watch it now in a linear experience, forget the business model. You know, ads are going to be served in a particular way on an old linear network. On a live streaming service, ads will be, it's the same experience from a consumer point, but ads are going to be served in a different way based on ID and etc. So I think the challenge for us, if it's going to be a true golden age of OTT, is how can it be made easier for advertisers to find that audience? Because at the moment there is a kind of, you know, there's a general acceptance of the whole industry. We are in that tipping point. And there's a general kind of drive to get it right and work together and collaborate and learn and make it work. So I think we are in the golden age of content. We are going to be in the golden age of advertiser-funded content as we migrate away from the kind of sole streaming service to a multiplicity of different, you know, business models. I would just sort of say, you know, we all have to work together to make it easier, because you used to be able to buy one piece of content from one vendor at one price. You can now buy that single piece of content from every vendor at every single price point. And I think that's the kind of challenge.
Well, so that leads. Go ahead, Lindsay.
No, I was just going to comment quickly, Evan, that you know, I'm with you, and I'm with John and sort of where he's going around sort of ease of transaction for the advertiser. But while this is like an age of one video, right, everywhere, there is an opportunity not to do, obviously, sort of a pure lift and shift of existing models to new viewing mechanisms. And I think that's where we also keep the consumer front and center, right? Taking their cues and making sure that we are building an ad-supported model that is not only in service of driving or offering opportunities for advertisers to reach sort of a highly coveted audience that might be not reachable elsewhere, but also one that serves the consumer, right, through endpoints and messaging opportunities that will kind of complement who they are and where they're at. So that's very much how we, on the Peacock side, and you alluded to some of this, Evan, earlier, that's how we really approach the model now, going back about 2.5 years, is the opportunity to embrace advertising in a streaming environment, but build it brand new, right? With new policies and principles around ad structures and frequency to make sure that we can solve for the challenges that may influence where customers choose to view otherwise.
Yeah, so to avoid the lift and shift, I like that phrase. You don't want to just repeat the same models. I mean, we all use Nielsen, and it was an accepted currency that we all used. It turns out it was probably mostly bullshit. So now we have to we need to build something new, and we're each kind of struggling building just like the content walled gardens, we're building some research walled gardens as well. So let me throw this open to Chris and Rose. If cable had pay and ads. It was a great ecosystem because we had two major revenue streams pretty much for every channel, except maybe one or two, right? If that's the last model, now we have we have the free segment, and then we have the semi-paid and segment. What is that new version? What are we going to offer people? And frankly, what's the experience that we're offering that makes the business model work? Meaning, can we just crash the free and paid ad models together into one ecosystem and have them be TV again? Or are we forever in these kind of multi-fragmented experiences? And how do we avoid that? And it's a pretty thorny question, but
I think one of the advantages we all have in the TV space is that people have been conditioned for 70 years to expect an ad pod to appear within the break, right? So if I'm carrying NBCU or any other network family, when I get that stream, there's going to be a 3-minute break in there, and people are conditioned to do that. I think where we can excel and make it a better experience is personalizing these ads, right? So using data and targeting to make it more relevant. I think there's a lot of room for improvement we were talking about measurability and things like that. There's a lot of room for improvement there, but as opposed to other mediums like social or digital, where people are making up ad units, like this ad unit is established and it's going to be the core of all of our businesses going forward.
But isn't there a risk with the pure programmatic, and especially to commoditize the experience? Do we veer into the risk of falling into the trap of social media, where experiences, groups, audiences, and impressions are so fragmented it's just a pure commodity? Rose, I mean, I'm curious as to how you think about this, especially from the addressable.
I don't think our product teams aren't gonna. It's like the two things we're talking about, right? Like consumers are gonna force us to aggregate because they can't deal, and our product teams are not gonna let us do exactly what we did with programmatic in some of the other, in maybe display. There are good options out there, right? Like we launched pause ads, and that's it's a full screen experience. It takes advantage of a moment in time and tries to bring sort of more native messaging into, again, like that user experience that runs across beam and stream. And now that's becoming a standard. And then that offsets some of the spots and dots. And so maybe the ad load can be a little lighter. Chris, myself, like our product teams are constantly thinking about how can we make the UI more engaging, more sticky, and where can we plug in some advertising experiences there that are gonna, surprise and delight John's teams, right? So I think we as the advertising people in the room also have these product people in the room, and our constituents, and our consumers that are going to hold us accountable. They want aggregation. They've told us that, and they want unique experiences. And I think as you see some of the players you mentioned coming online this year with advertising, they have to bring unique formats. because
you would think. I mean, Chris mentioned we've trained the consumer to expect a commercial pod in
but not at 3 minutes. I got a call.
Right.
There is an opportunity to reinvent that, especially
agreed.
For the audience. And I think what we've seen in leading with an offering that where we have no more than 5 minutes of ads per hour is that ads actually perform better, right? When we give
I guess that's my my question. Is can we create a better experiences for both the advertiser and the audience
of our consumer and our advertiser, who we need to be building this next evolution of video experiences for, and kind of representing the Peacock product. It works, right? We are seeing that sort of value exchange for the customer also translate to elevated brand performance for partners. And Rose is totally spot on that there's also new ways to surprise and delight with ad innovations, right? We're in market with 10 ad innovations today, inclusive of a pause ad, binge ad, several other obvious that we could speak to. But it is a new age, right? It is television everywhere, but with an opportunity to completely rewrite the playbook.
And do you think, giving the pause ad thing is interesting? Because so we train them to expect the pods, right? Then we train them to expect to pay and get the pods. But then, get this, we train them to have no ads, and they fell in love with that. Now they're back, and the audience understands that actually a mix of the two is probably going to be chill for me.
Right.
The question is, can we reinvent that? When you ask them what they want, and I have a survey that I just got back that's around 17,000 respondents. When they're fine paying and getting ads, they want 4 to 6 minutes. The sweet spot is 5 minutes. That's how much advertising they want if they're paying. It's a brand new model. It's not cable, which had as much as 18 minutes or more per hour. Can we though train our advertisers and our bosses to expect, hey, we're going to have substantially fewer slots. We're going to sell them for a lot more. Or we can go this more programmatic route, but we need the mix of both, I guess is the question. Because on the digital side, there doesn't seem to be a lot of the more large CPM, harder sold, hard integrations in the digital world. It seems to be sell fast, sell a lot, keep going. Unless I'm missing something. I don't sell every day, so it's not my world.
I mean, there's a couple of things to unpack, right? And I won't speak for Rose or Lindsay, but at Fubo, like, when we talk about programmatic, 95% of what we do is direct one-to-one deals. To us, it's just the transaction type. And if buyer is happy to run their campaign through a DSP, so they have aggregated reporting in one place, we'll support that. So I think, like, comparing it to what happened in display is not what's happening here. And I think everyone's very protective of this inventory. And, to us, if you want to buy direct IO or if you want to buy programmatic, it's the same price. You're not,
right.
We're not discounting on transaction type.
Your question, Evan, is one about the race to the bottom in digital. And Chris's point is absolutely right.
And that is the fear that I have as we move to the screen. And it does seem to be the resistance I'm hearing a little bit from the advertising.
It's a different product. If particularly in Chris's game, live sports is expensive.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to pay for it somehow. And actually the kind of your notion of training the consumers accept they've got repeating something from earlier, consumers accept they've got to pay somehow. And and
they don't want to be crammed 12 minutes of ads into every hour as a result.
That's in our gift as an industry to get wrong or right, and we're going to get that ad loading right ultimately, because the business models and the consumer behaviour of switch off or engagement, will dictate what happens. And again, scarcity, demand and supply will set price. But this stuff is expensive. It's much more expensive. It's around the most expensive disposable content in the world. You need to feed these machines every day. You need new content, you need new series, you need, live sport, and that's why live sport is so fantastic for delivering live audience and news, but it's really expensive. And so, there is a kind of, we're all in this together. Advertisers want that quality of audience, and to your point, Chris, that highly
and experience.
But it's a highly targeted, focused audience. I think that's where, you know, the race to the bottom might not happen, but it's in our gift. And, you know, advertisers want efficiency, and OTT on-demand audiences, you get much more efficiency. It's not a canteen service where everybody gets served the same food. It's more of an a la carte menu where you get what you want. And guess what? An a la carte menu has a different pricing structure to a canteen. You know, and that's why I say the business model from a consumer point of view is not going to get in the way. We're going to deliver as many different business models as the consumer wants, and as many different business models as the advertiser wants. And if the advertiser wants to be in the program, around the program, or even supporting the program to drive traffic off screen, off platform, with out of home and social and digital to a program that they're sponsoring and involved in, again, advertisers will find new ways of working with content and with platforms.
And what do you think, and this is for everybody across the board, what do you think the industry isn't doing well right now? What do you think we're not doing from an advertising standpoint, from a consumer standpoint? Is there a message we can be communicating better to the agency and client world, or is there a way that the client world can be organizing itself better? You know, if there is resistance to moving money into pure CTV, which I don't think there is as much anymore, but it's still not all there, like, because it should be moving faster. One could very easily argue, because that's where all the eyeballs are, especially in the home. Eyeballs are leaving mobile and they're going to the big connected television set. So I throw this open to you, Lindsay, thoughts on, you know, what we as an industry or what the community can be communicating better, both to advertisers or consumers. You know, you talk about all the free ad supported streaming television out there, but the consumer still isn't necessarily, they're picking it up, but it's not consistent compared to, let's say, you know, traditional or the other premium streamers. What do you think we can be doing, communicating better or doing better for both constituencies?
You know, I think a lot of this comes back to measurement in many cases. Truly, I think that by relying on yesterday's measurement, our advertisers are not able to see the holistic picture and invest and plan accordingly, and understand and value media as accurately as possible, right? And with new currencies, and I'll speak to some of the test and learn work that we've been doing with our first certified measurement partner for cross-platform measurement, who's iSpot. We're actually able to see how much of Peacock's audience is additive to a linear schedule. And it edges around 2/3 of a buy, right? When a client invests appropriately, according to best practices, right? Which we would say, and what we've learned from our test and learn, is there does need to be, you know, 30 to 40% of investment that takes place in a connected device and connected forum. So by relying on fragmented measurement, advertisers are not able to look at their, you know, investments holistically, and it ultimately comes back to a misvaluing, if you will, and therefore, miss in investment across all of those platforms. Where
tell me a little bit more about that. So, are you comparing a buy on Peacock against linear in the NBC universe, or is it linear against the entire universe at that point?
We're looking specifically in our test and learn around investment across our networks and platforms, right? And the additive.
So you're comparing what Peacock does, you know, additive to the linear experience. It's interesting because it's the same kind of data that you hear from other players as well, which is that 40, you know, that additive nature is there. Chris, you know, Rose, same question. What do you think we could be doing better? Because, you know, again, you both come from, you know, the whole television ecosystem. What do we think we could be doing better in the CTV ecosystem to be communicating the value, the ease of use, the audience, et cetera, to the advertisers that you're talking to, or that you might want to talk to on a moving forward basis?
Well, I think I agree with what Lindsay's saying, and it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Like, we're still in an evolution. Like, the title is the golden age, but we're still in an evolution of measurement, and there's a lot of test and learning going on, and that breeds better results, right? So as we continue to explore what the right options are, it's going to get better. And I think the other piece is, you know, we're going from one form of measurement to another, and we're going from linear ratings to or GRPs to impression-based buying. And advertisers, there's a learning curve, and for some advertisers it's quick, they get it real quick. Others it takes longer, and they need to understand how to input this into their media mix models and whatnot to make sure they're making the right investment. So
Rose, do you think we'll ever get to a place where we're going to, I think this is a good question for everybody, but do you think we'll get to one common currency again? Again, as much as bullshit that Nielsen was, do you think is ACR data something we can kind of all head to with regards to unified measurement? Or is this going to be everybody's going to serve up their own data for their own clients, which, one could argue that's not the worst thing in the world as long as you create key performance indicators for everywhere that you're buying. I'm curious as to, because you aggregate and then you also sell individual platform. This question was for Rose. John, I'll get to you in 2 seconds.
John, it's my question. I think it's going to be a few. I hope it's going to be a few. Right?
Few
like,
common
I don't think
current.
there's going to be one. Yeah, I think there's going to be a few for a long time. I don't think there's going to be one common currency. But I think, one thing I will say is, like, between the brand and the content producer, there are agencies and ad tech partners. And I think it's really, even for us, if we consider ourselves as a distributor kind of on that content producer end of the spectrum, like, we're dependent on our platform partners, our ad tech partners. So I think, earlier this year, we announced a partnership with Yahoo, making our addressable available on Yahoo DSP. There are lots of people getting a lot of things right, present company included. I won't name names for some of the people that aren't getting it right and are kind of creating a lot of noise and confusion for the rest of us. But I think what we've seen is the agencies that can get to a couple common currencies are really succeeding right now, present company included. And then there are others who are really struggling, and it's because they can't nail that. And we need them to, because then they can actually then the dollars can keep flowing and they can keep moving to where the eyeballs are. And then it's a similar thing with the platform partners. We announced a partnership with Magnite earlier this year on our set-top box VOD inventory. The platforms that can bring together beam and stream, kind of a more traditional TV and some of this new TV. The ones that can get that right are really going to help us all out, but we're dependent on those partners. And once they settle on currency that we can all use to trade, then I think we're going to see things move faster.
Don't you, John? I'll throw this to you because you work in an agency and you're the sole person representing the entire agency community. No pressure whatsoever.
I think the original question, and sorry for interrupting earlier, the original question was really what are we doing right and what are we not doing right? And I think there's a kind of, to Chris's point about an ongoing evolution, I think we're all guilty of siloing.
I know.
And in terms of how we buy, sell.
I have just myself, so sorry.
Okay, sorry, but in that kind of exchange thing, if you want to buy inventory on advertising media, it's one. If you want to buy sponsorship, it's another. If you want to buy in programming or virtual product placement, it's another. And what clients want.
This is what I was getting to before. It's very thorny.
What clients really want is a great association with the content and that content's audience. And because that's what enables them to, change their business. But
let me turn this around and point this at the client now. And I think one of the reasons why your division was invented, which is an investment team in content before a sponsor is even identified, right? Is that a lot of sponsors, and I mean this in the most polite way, have no fucking idea what they want. right? And so isn't the delivery on the platform side kind of incumbent upon the advertiser understanding what the actual goal is? Today I'm branding, today it's customer acquisition, today it's, you know, remarketing. And that will make it like, because then programmatic makes sense versus branded content versus this. But when a client doesn't necessarily understand what their impressions are dedicated to, that makes it much more difficult for the sell side to, you know, basically provide an experience that reaches certain benchmarks. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it really does. And you're right in terms of, you know, one of my catchphrases is, how can we help? Because a client doesn't know what they want until they see it. And when they see something that they do want, they really want it, because it can, and it's incumbent upon us. And again, I'll go back to Chris's point of we're in a process of development, is to build something that makes it easy for clients to buy. Because if we can together create an ecosystem that enables a client to buy better, and better doesn't mean cheaper, better means smarter. Better value for what they spend, smarter, and delivering the right content and the right user experience. That's what clients want. Clients don't want to get in the way of the viewer's experience. Clients don't want to have inefficient buying mechanisms. Clients want to be with their audience and not the people who are irrelevant to them. So clients do know what they want, and clients do want to have it to be easier for them to access that. So when I talk about silos, and one of our ways of getting in early with the content owners and collaborating with the content distribution platforms is to provide that holistic thing. So if we as Apex Content Ventures own the inventory on the platform, own the sponsorship opportunities, and also own the way of amplifying the content. So I always used to say I would only want to invest in content that the broadcaster, the platform, would put on the side of a bus. Now, Apex, we can put it on the side of the bus for everybody as well, and drive awareness of that content. And it's that kind of the bomb we dropped earlier around search and discoverability. Is there's a lot of this stuff available at the moment. And, you know, we're in a golden age of content. We're actually in an oversupply of content, if we're honest.
We're in a bubble.
And your race to the bottom is about an oversupply market where we have to protect the value of the content because it is really expensive. It is really expensive. So it's a golden age for content producers because they've never been busier. You try and book a showrunner for the next 2 years. They're in work, as are the great writers. They're busy today. So how can we as an industry collaborate to make it easier to get into the program, around the program, and drive audiences to the program that they're supporting? There's a model in sport which is really easy for that, whether you're on the jersey, you're on the perimeter board, you're in the title sponsorship, you have an association with the teams and the players and the leagues. So how can we make that ecosystem better? And I say silos is we go to one department and one corridor to buy the inventory. We go to another corridor and another department to buy the in-programming. Then we've got the virtual product placement. Then we've got we want everything.
Yeah, if you want a great example of that, watch Welcome to Wrexham. Ryan Reynolds is a one-man kind of
machine.
Yeah. So a question for all of you, and this will be the capstone of the panel. You know, we're entering what could be a tough advertising economy. We've had 5 down months, retraction of ad in the U.S. in a row. There's a report out this week from MediaPost that scatters down a decent amount year on year. So what do you think is going to matter most as ad dollars get more competitive to take off the table in the next year? What do you think is going to matter most? To the advertiser or to the platform to be the deal that gets made versus the one that doesn't? Chris, I'm going to go to you first.
I think it's a lot of what we've talked about. I think measurability they need to be able to account our return on ad spend, and I think we're all in a position where we all represent premium content. So I think that puts us in a good space. And I think the connected TV space, despite overall macro trends, is still on the uptick. Subscribers, viewership is growing. So the dollars will follow that. Yes, I think there will be challenges in 2023, but I think we're all in a pretty good position.
Lindsay, thoughts?
I was going to, I think, emphasize a bit of what Chris just touched on, but proving value, right? I think, and there's quite a bit of a connection, back to making sure the underlying counting is right and is holistic. And ultimately, that provides a better ingredient for us to be able to demonstrate and have thoughtful conversations with our partners about what is working and where is there room to roll up our sleeves. So, you know, that's definitely a key area of focus for us.
John?
I'd say in a downturn, there's a flight to quality. You know, and to your point, Chris, that we're at the top of the market's going to win, because that's where it's, and where it's going to be easiest to trade is going to win. If it's harder and not as good, we're going to go to easier and better. Yeah, everybody sleeps on the quality of the back office as a deciding factor on where money goes. I think it has more of a factor than most people think. Rose, what are your thoughts on that?
Sure. So one of the things I say is like share of voice equals share of wallet. So I think, you know, echoing what everyone said is like, where can where can advertisers put their money that's going to have the highest impact from a share of voice perspective? So that really plays into the things like sports, that the real human associations, and then it's performant media spending, where that's tied back to everything we just talked about, where it's really measurable, really precise, and there's no waste. So cool. I think those two things win.
Yeah, the one thing I would add is I think the distance between first impression and ultimate transaction is going to wind up being a major deciding factor in the next 18 months, which is why I think you're seeing Amazon's platform grow so fast. So I do think, you know, and when Apple gets seriously into the ad business, that'll be another major factor as well. So watch for that. You guys have been fantastic. Really great conversation. I appreciate your time. I'm glad you traveled in for the panel, and I hope to see you all again soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.